The Zen master Hakuin was praised by his neighbors as one living a pure life. A beautiful Japanese girl, whose parents owned a food store, lived near him. Suddenly, without warning, her parents discovered she was with child. This made her parents angry. She would not confess who the man was, but after much harassment at last named Hakuin. In great anger, the parent went to the master. "Is that so?" was all he would say. After the child was born, it was brought to Hakuin. By this time he had lost his reputation, which did not trouble him, but he took very good care of the child. He obtained milk from his neighbors and everything else he needed. A year later, the girl mother could stand it no longer. She told her parents the truth. The real father of the child was a young man who worked in the fish market. The mother and father of the girl at once went to Hakuin to ask forgiveness, to apologize at length, and to get the child back. Hakuin was willing. In yielding the child, all he said was, "Is that so?"
How good is your good? I mean, how good is it? Is your good that good? Or is it that good? Or is it that good? Or is it that good? How good is good? What is good? Who is to say what is good? A man came to Jesus and said, "Good master," and he looked back at him and said, "There is none good but God." So who is good? Good is a very interesting word. Good is relative only to what you're doing for me and if I like what you're doing, generally speaking. If you're appealing to my ego or giving me something I think I need or want, especially if I want. In the story I'm going to share with you on this part of the sound of one hand clapping, I want to talk to you about Hakuin. He was a very interesting Zen master. He was known for his purity, for his simpleness, for his kindness. He was very, very upfront with his life with people and his students. So he had nothing to hide. He was such a kind and sweet man that one day in the village that he lived in, he was taken advantage of. And people like this are often taken advantage of. But listen to the story, it will help you. A beautiful girl in his village suddenly found herself pregnant. And the father of this little girl wanted to know who the father was. She didn't know who to blame it on because she didn't want him to know who the real father was. So she blamed it on Hakuin, the Zen master. Well, the father stomped over to his hut with the baby after it was born and handed it to him. And he said, "I guess you know you're responsible for this." The master took the child and looked at the man and said, "Oh, is that so?" The master took care of the baby. He did things that most people wouldn't do. He begged for milk and food for the child. He lost all of his students because they thought he was a fallen master, because they thought he fathered this child out of wedlock and all of that other moral stuff that we think is so right and so good. He never complained. He just took care of the child. Now, this is a metaphor for you and me. There are times when you are going to be blamed for things you did not do. How good is your good? Do you have to stand there and right the situation and tell people how wrong they are for blaming you for something you didn't do at all? Or can you just let it ride and see how it works out and say, "Oh, is that so?" Most people have to defend themselves. We do a lot of damage in defending ourselves because behind the background of me defending myself against what you are accusing me of is all of my hate, my fear, and my anger. And it just wells up and wells up and wells up within me until I come to a certain point where it isn't really about righting the wrong. It's just about me being right over you and trying to make you suffer for what I believe makes you wrong. When I do that kind of thing, I don't use my energy very well. In fact, I drain my energy. And I start learning to use it defensively, which is not a good way to use energy. Energy must be used for love, for the effort towards love, and not to defend oneself. People are going to have their opinions about you. Everybody has an opinion about you. And remember what I've always said, nobody likes you anyway. So no matter what you think, say, or do, they're going to look at you and not like you anyway. And even when you prove them wrong, they're still not going to like you because they're going to be embarrassed about what they've said and done to you, and they don't want to be around you anyway. It is all very silly. It doesn't matter. What I think is very interesting about this story is we get to see what real goodness is. Really good. I'm not talking about good in the moral sense, in the philosophical sense, or the biblical sense. I am talking about what real goodness is. This man didn't fight what his circumstances were. He had every right to look at what was going on and argue and fight and say unkind things. But he didn't. All he said was, "Is that so?" He took care of the baby. He took care of the child. He nurtured it. He kept it warm. He fed it. And he treated it with love and respect. This is exactly how we want to live our lives. Don't let circumstances rule your life. Don't let the ebb and flow of what you think of as good and bad and right and wrong, the circumstances of your living, take you away from the meaning of your life. Circumstances are going to come and go. It's the ebb and flow of living in this world, to live in the world, but not to let the world live in you. A little Zen story. I love this story. The little student is walking with his master. And the student looks at the master and says, "Master, why is it so arduous? Why is the path to love, the path to wisdom so arduous?" And the master looks at him and says, "Because it must pass through you." Don't let things pass through you and keep you from the meaning of yourself. Move to the meaning of you and do not allow circumstances to dictate to you how you will and will not respond. You always have the presence of love within you. It exceeds the value of any given circumstance that you might be in. And once you understand that, once you are at that place where it exceeds your circumstances and your conditions, you are in a position of great power, because it is then that you can still the waters of discontent and fear. And you can come to a moment where you're being authentic with yourself and your life. So back to our story. So after a while, the separation between mother and child was just too much for her, and she decided to tell the truth that it was a young man in the village that actually was the father. So the father of this young woman had to go over to the Zen master's house and retrieve the child. And of course, he walked over and apologized and said, "I am so sorry for accusing you." And the Zen master handed him the child and said, "Oh, is that so?" And that was the end of it. He didn't make a deal out of it. There was no drama. There was no "you should have known." There was no moral complaint put on the man. "Oh, is that so?" You see, when you're really working on yourself, the circumstances and conditions of your life don't dictate how you are, the way you are, your being, how you will respond. Things are the way they are, and they change in any given moment. The master was not looking at the circumstances to judge whether or not he was a good person, quote unquote. His goodness didn't need anybody else to look at him and say, "Oh yes, you're a good person." The goodness of his being, the intrinsic part of what he really was, spoke louder than the circumstances could dictate. That is a very rare quality in a person. It can happen to you, though. Listen to me. Whatever your circumstances are, be they karmic or something spontaneous or something that's been going on for many, many moons in your life. Is that so? Really? Perception isn't reality. If I want to make my perceptions my reality, I can certainly do so, but what good would that do me? Then I'm only looking at things based on my noggin and what I believe in, what I think, what I've come to, my whole past, everything my family's put me through, all of my training, all of the things that I've been told is right and wrong, good and bad. How will I ever know the truth? The master was not interested in the circumstances. He wasn't trying to right a wrong. We spend too much time trying to right wrongs, as I told you earlier. And because we spend so much time doing that, we've lost our ability to forgive. One of the most important aspects of a human being's life is to be able to forgive, to release and let go of those things which keep us from the nature of our heart and our soul. Most people are too busy wanting what they want to have what they really need. What do we really need? A relationship with our heart. What is my relationship with my heart? How will I ever know what that is? I won't know it if I allow circumstances to dictate how it is that I feel about my life or about any given subject I may find myself in. Let the presence of great love within you dictate where you are and what you are. When you feel your presence, that is love in you, you won't need to have anyone tell you how you should or should not act. You won't need anyone to tell you what is up or down, in or out, right or wrong, good or bad. You will need only a moment to look at the circumstances and go, oh, is that so? Is that the way it seems to be for now? That's the way it seems to be for now. At any given moment, in any given space, all of that can change. And when it starts to change, then our life begins to move in another direction. People are always looking for a way to change their life. I've heard this so much from students. They always want some way in which they can change the way they live their life. So they look for different positions and circumstances in the world to give them something they want. But when we do that, when we live our life from circumstance to circumstance, from condition to condition, we lose a certain element of our spontaneity, of our creativity, of our beauty, because we don't let something that is greater than ourselves merge in us and overtake us. Listen, don't you have enough to resent in your life? And where has it gotten you? It's just made your life very small. And pretty soon, you find more to be resentful of, and more and more and more. And before you know it, your whole life is just one small little thing. It's all about trying to avoid pain and suffering and wondering why everybody picked on you all of your life. Is that the way you want to live? There are lessons to be learned in everything that we do. And there are lessons that are beyond our conceptual ideas and beliefs. And if we are available to those things, they can change the way we live. I say, let everything benefit you. Let every mistake that you think has been made in your life be the feature of your living. Let it be something that brings about wisdom and kindness in you. Provoke wisdom, provoke kindness, provoke compassion. Then true forgiveness starts to arise. It's not something you practice, it's something that you are. Real forgiveness is involuntary love. Meditation, it's about an involuntary love. This is where you exercise that part of you that's all about love. Philosophy and religion will do you no good at all. Everybody knows who's watching me right now that we should forgive. But that doesn't mean anything until you've come to the place of love. When it is more important for you and me to feel the presence of love in the midst of a situation that seems unfair, that is what real love is all about. That is the circumstance beyond the circumstance. That is the life of our living. And if you forget that even for one single moment, you're going to find you can slip into despair really quickly, and hatred becomes the way of your life. Don't let hate and other people's misunderstanding of you dictate the joy of your life. Let love live you. Forgive me. Namaste. We're here at Yokoji Zen Center up in the beautiful mountains around Idlewild. You got to come up and see it. I'm with their wonderful Roshi. Tenshin, let's talk a little bit about forgiveness, the pertinence of it. A lot of people start out meditation, they start working on themselves. The first thing they hit is their self-hatred, their resentment towards another person, maybe a parent, whatever. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the thing for me with forgiveness is that it's a letting go of energies that can be very negative in my own approach to living. And if my mind is always sort of running over what they have done to me, etc., is I can't really fully live my own life. Certain things need a lot of processing because some things are indeed very difficult to forgive.
When you talk about processing, what does that mean?
Partially, obviously, you got to look at the events that occurred. Part of that, looking at the events, may be the person and the position that they were in, the position that you were in. See if there's any fault within that from my perspective.
Right.
And then from the perspective of the other person is see if they've learned from that particular lesson. If they've apologized, if you're not going to get an apology, there's many different, you know. But the main thing with forgiveness is so that you can move on with life and continue to live, fully. So really is something you're doing for yourself in that process.
How do you teach someone to forgive?
Well, hopefully I can set an example in doing that, and I think some people learn from example. It's really encouraging people to live fully. That life really occurs in the place that you stand. And to drag in your history from the past can really spoil your appreciation of the living that you have today. I'm not saying that healing, etc., is not important. It is.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, there has to be a point where you let go of the past in that way and not define yourself as something that occurred in the past, but to live as a free person in this moment in time.
What about the energy around unforgiveness when I'm holding energy and resentment towards someone who may or may not know what they do? They just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complex thing. It's obviously you've got to try and communicate to somebody else about what they are doing, say in the present, or what they've done in the past, because then at least you might get some feedback to modify that perspective.
What about entitlement? Everybody's so entitled these days. I had the right to do that. I had the right to say that to you.
Who said that?
Yeah, that's what I always wonder.
Yeah.
Who determines
exactly.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it is the core of meditation is to return to the reality that is occurring now. You know, and learn from it. So that's the thing. If this is happening and it's coming up again, then it needs to be looked at.
What about the part where I draw it to myself?
You mean actions?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I have to look at that.
Yeah.
And see how did I.
What is it about me that made this possible?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's a very big one that people don't want to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you help your students look at that big thing? Like I look innocent, I look like I didn't do anything, but I'm here with you in this whole, let's say, situation. Am I really that innocent?
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so.
the thing is,
I don't think any party is.
Yeah, and I think one of the difficulties that people see with things like Zen practices, they think it's something that occurs in the head. There's certain understandings that are sort of attain. It's really a living process, and in that living process is that you have to open yourself up to really learn you know, from somebody else. So, you know, they call me a Zen master, but that means that I'm always learning from whatever it is that's coming up. It doesn't mean that I have something that I will hold on to. It means that I learn from that person. And the more I sort of experience that person, the more I learn from that person, because we don't just communicate through the mouth.
No, we don't, do we?
No.
It's energetic.
The whole body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Everything we do, it's energetic towards another person. Setting that, I've always found that the motive of setting another person free from my harsh judgments as a person is a pretty important motivator for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I don't want to hold anyone to me in that regard.
And that's where, you know, for myself, I always say, get a life. You know, when I when I do, get a life, get on with your life, let them go. You know, really give them that gift. Yeah.
That is really very true. Very difficult for most people to look at. Rationalization, entitlement, and deserving play a big role in that for most of us.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. This was an important session talking about forgiveness. It really affects all of us. We'll be right back. Please don't go away. One of the things that moved me the most about this story, and this is one of my very favorite Zen stories, is how forgiving the master was. He was absolutely compassionate. When accused of something as horrendous as fathering a child that isn't yours, and being told, here, this is yours, and him taking the child as lovingly as he did and saying, oh, is that so? I don't think there's anything more moving. I mean, what can you say to that? What a beautiful man. His goodness far exceeded the philosophy and the religion of his day, maybe even exceeded what you believe would be fair and right. And did he try to protest the whole thing? No. He merely accepted it as a part of his karma, a part of his life. And he loved the baby. He took very good care of it. His students all deserted him. Did he make explanation to them? Evidently not. He let them decide what they needed to go do, and he let them go. He wasn't thinking about the unfairness of the situation like most people would, and that's how dishonest we are. When I am fighting with you about what you've accused me of, it speaks more of my own dishonesty than it does what you're accusing me of. The fact that the Zen master could just accept the baby for what it was and take very good care of it showed the depth of his intrinsic goodness. And that means he found a way within himself to find more love, to take care of what was in front of him. Life isn't fair. There's no such thing as fairness in this world. Absolutely none. And if you want to believe there is, you're sadly mistaken, and you're going to find a great deal of sorrow and pain. What is presented to you and me in the course of our lifetime, whether we think it is right or not, or fair or not, is none of our business. It's how we take care of what is in front of us. Can I be the most loving of this situation, detached from my emotions, my passions, and my own beliefs, my own moral beliefs about what I think should or should not be happening? I know a lot of people, I have a lot of students that would really fight this story and say it just wasn't fair. But fair is never what life is about. It's about love. It's about you finding love in the oddest places of your life, like when you're being accused of something you didn't do, or you're being misunderstood or misread. Instead of getting all angry about it, take care of what's in front of you. Give it all the love, all the gentleness, all the compassion you possibly can. Oh, is that so? And when people are asking you why this could happen to someone like you, oh, is that so? Explanations, comments, criticisms just don't matter. Again, compassion does. And when he's asked to give up the child, it's the same thing. Oh, is that so? Don't make up stories, dear one. Life is too short for stories, and everybody's got a whole slew of them in their living. And if you have stories about what life should and should not be, you're never going to find the meaning of yourself. You're only going to find conclusions that cause you great pain and sorrow. Come to my website at aspire.org. That's A-S-P-I-R-E, aspire.org. Go take a look at my radio programs. I have a whole slew of radio programs there that you can go and listen to as my gift to you. And if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, or you have a subject you want me to talk about, just type in right from there on the radio page what you would like me to talk about. You can leave your name or not, whatever you like. Is that so? And I'd be happy to consider it as a subject. And the more edgy it is, of course, the more I'm interested in it. And my commentaries, my podcast, and my videocast. I work very diligently on these. These are kind of my memoirs of what I've been through in the course of my own practice as a student and as a teacher. And I think you'll find them very interesting if you're willing to listen and read and watch the commentaries, videocasts, and podcasts with a sense of not anticipated understanding, but maybe a surprise here and there, some spontaneity. Life is inexplicable. This is so inexplicable, this thing called our life. And my new series, The Sound of One Hand Clapping, might help you to come to accept the beauty of that. My 4-disc set with all 8 of my beautiful discourses on the subject of the sound of one hand clapping is yours. Go take a look. You can order it safely and securely by going to my website at aspire.org. Go look at TV programs, and you'll even see new programs, The Sound of One Hand Clapping. And if you're not comfortable with that, give me a call at the number you see at the bottom of your screen. I'll probably be there. I'm a one-man band. There's no great staff here. It's just me offering to you the alternative to a conventional life, the breath of spirit, as I like to talk about it, that lives in you. And while you're there, maybe you'll consider becoming a sponsor and helping us sustain our TV programs and our programs that we try to offer to you that talk about personal transformation. There's workshops, there's retreats, and also the chance for you to come and be with me in a counseling session, coaching you on meditation and inner work. All of that is available on my website at aspire.org, and I hope that you'll avail yourself of it and really enjoy. I want to thank you for watching. We'll be back again very soon with another in the series of The Sound of One Hand Clapping. I hope you'll join us. And again, please forgive me. Namaste. We're here at the Yokoji Zen Center in the beautiful mountains near what?
I'm sorry. He didn't like the laugh. He didn't like the jovial.
It's like, what the heck's going on here?
We're having a good time.
Good old hootenanny here.
Yeah.